thank you for being here today. Thank County Manager Lee Smith for joining me at the podium. I must say this was a lot of hard work, and it's a we thing and not an I thing. It was with city staff and county staff really sitting down, talking about issues and working towards compromise. County Manager Smith and I are pleased today that we have come to terms on a framework for a new Savannah-Chatham Metropolitan Intergovernmental Agreement. The document represents compromise in the best sense of the word. We started far apart, each aggressively representing the interests of our constituencies. We each conceded ground, and we met somewhere in the middle. It was a long and sometimes very bumpy road to get here today. But I think everyone would agree that it's better to have a good agreement rather than a fast agreement. The framework is a big step forward. It makes what is ambiguous in the current agreement concerning the management of the police chief and decisions in the SCMPD jurisdiction. It provides for a 2-year phase-in to allow the city and county to jointly formulate an evidenced approach to future operations and cost share. This will increase, of course, police accountability and provide a supporting cost structure for each jurisdiction on an actual basis for service delivery. The agreement resolves a lot of outstanding issues on both sides. As city and county managers, we believe the framework represents true compromise made by both the city and the county in the best interest of this shared community. We will spend the next few weeks ensuring that City Council and the County Commission understands the content of the framework before bringing it forward for vote. I want to thank the County Manager and his staff for working so closely with me and city staff in the creation of this document. While we did not always agree, we did come to the table open, fostering honest dialogue throughout the process, and the relationship I sincerely believe today is better between the city and county, a great result. I would like to thank both City Council and the County Commission for having and trusting us to work through this agreement and come up with a recommendation that we both can live with, be proud of, and serve this entire community. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. First of all, thanks for coming this morning. I think it is I didn't wear a red tie, I wore a green, so it's a green letter day for Savannah and for Chatham County. I was thinking a lot last night about today and what's led up to today and this agreement. And the word partnership we've talked about for Stephanie and I for months. And what it means, it describes in many ways cooperation, association, collaboration, coalitions, alliance, unions, affiliation, and to me the most important thing is a relationship. Today is more than a governmental business agreement. It's a culmination and development of a relationship for the purpose of bringing quality police service to this entire community. Stephanie and I both have used the word repeatedly in the discussion, community, not city and county. Both Stephanie and I have agreed from the very beginning of these discussions, we talked about it earlier this morning, that this process would be about producing a better Savannah-Chatham Metro Police Department, and we feel that we've conducted ourselves and constructed this document in that way. After today, both City Council and County Commissioners will review the document, as Stephanie just said, and consider allowing us to develop a final document to move the police department forward. I'd like to thank the Board of Commissioners and City Council for allowing the staff to do this, to work on this framework. It's been a sincere process, as Stephanie stated earlier, and I want to thank the city staff, the county staff. They make our jobs really easy. So I'd like to personally thank folks like Linda Kramer, Assistant County Manager, David Maxwell with the City Finance for their tireless work. Stephanie and I would come up with great ideas and sometimes bad ideas, sometimes disagree, and they sometimes acted as mediators, and that's all right. It's a group. We found that it's a family. But their expertise, along with others, have been phenomenal. If agreed by both boards, the next 24 months will consist of a staff-level work effort with a group including the police chief, staff already mentioned, and a third-party police consultant that will come in to aid us in developing the criteria of policing in the unincorporated areas based on call data. I'm confident with the assistance of Chief Lumpkin, we can develop a system by which we get beyond the perception. We've talked a lot about perception. It's more than perception, but develop a reality of real community policing satisfying the needs of the community. Now I want to thank Chief Lumpkin. The one thing that I have, and I've told Stephanie repeatedly, we have daily conversation. If it's not just in an email or a phone call or by text, and that's what we've committed to do, and he has done that, and I want to thank the chief for that. This agreement has brought forth real compromise on both the part of the county and the city for the good of all, and I personally and professionally am confident that with the guidance of both boards, this 2-year phase-in approach will bring about a police service agreement clearly understood, accountable, transparent, and cost-effective for all parties. I want to thank my associate and my partner, Stephanie Cutter, City Manager, for her cooperation and continued support in the development of the new Metro agreement, and moreover, a better relationship, a great relationship between the county and the city. And now, Stephanie and I have said we would agree to questions if there are any, and we'd be glad to answer those specifically about the agreement.
Do y'all feel that this might be a little premature, this announcement, since both boards still have to approve the terms y'all came up with?
Well, I think what we are announcing here is that both managers have come and reached compromise on an agreement that we feel is worthy of recommendation to both governing bodies. I think that's a big step in this process. We both support the agreement. A lot of good, hard discussion came out of it, and I believe that both governing bodies will be pleased with what we've come up with.
I agree. I think it's a process, and both boards knew we were developing this, and both agreed that we as staff would look at developing a framework, so I don't see it as premature. I see it as part of the process.
Mr. Smith, one of the big things that the commission has said from the beginning is they want more officers in the unincorporated areas.
Yes.
From looking at the initial framework of this, maybe down the road it has that, but it does not give that immediately. How can you pitch that then to the board as this is a good agreement for the county?
Well, obviously it's going to be a work in process, but I have to look at the work that the chief is doing now. One of the things that we're going to be doing is having regular meetings with the city manager and I and the chief on a monthly basis, but I'm also meeting now with the chief weekly. So as we're getting issues out in the county where people are saying we don't see police or there's a concern, I bring that to him and then into Assistant Chief Julie Talbert, and they're addressing that. So that's all we can do. You know, 96% of the crimes out in the unincorporated area are property crimes, but we know that it's important. We've had a lot of discussion about community policing, so we know we've got to have more visibility out in that community, and the chief is committed to do that.
A lot of the discussion has been about costs. With this 2-year phasing, and you have no set price for how these costs are going to be divided in 2 years, how do you know you're not going to be exactly where we are now, back to negotiations, if people aren't satisfied with the commissioners and council members aren't satisfied with how the costs are divided up in 2 years from now?
Well, you know, if you look at right into the first 2 years at the 14.1, then you have the 911 cost. So I think we do have something that's reasonable to both sides in the first 2 years. But then you do have to negotiate the end of year 2, in that 6-month period, to look at what the costs are. Remember something, if the community wants more police, out in the unincorporated area, what we're saying is that we would have to pay for that. And that's all right, but we then have to identify what is that cost. So, you know, that's going to be something that, will it be 14 million or 12 million or 16 million? It will depend on the service that the commission puts forth in year 2017.
Ms. Cutter, the county conceded the power notion in its proposal back in January. They asked for this cost-based evidence thing, and that seemed to be the tipping point. Why did it take several more months for the city to finally bend on this point?
Well, I must say that it has always been the city's position that the county manager would have full access to the chief. The police chief and the assistant chief have always attended the county manager's meeting and the commission meetings, and there was a reason for that. And that reason was to foster good communication. So that really was never an issue. When I looked at the merger agreement and began to study it, I realized that was my assumption, but quickly realized that may not have been someone else's assumption. So that was quite easy for me. We needed to put that in writing. That was step one. So there was never really a problem with that. And I don't feel that the county manager felt that that was a problem as well. As it relates to costs, we had a merger agreement on the table, and I believe in following what has been adopted. We've worked through those issues. We've kind of put those cost concerns aside and actually talked about what was right, what was fair, what was best, and how we could move that forward. And that's why we're here today in agreement.
Can you all explain the background behind the decision to include the city's compensation for the Cactus building, the Comcast building?
Well, the Comcast building, that was something that was done years ago as part of the East-West Corridor, part of the Durin project, and that is SPLOST funds. So those were separate. So Ms. Cutter and I both agree that, you know, had we compromised on that number, it has to be paid back to SPLOST regardless. So the city, and as part of this agreement, we're asking that the city pay that $1.75 million, and we both agree that's fair because it's SPLOST dollars. It's got to be paid back. But we have compromised clearly on the other dollars. When you look at costs for recorder's court, costs for at the 39% for services, we were able to compromise and basically zero it out between the two. I mean, because when we look at, you know, were we going to argue over $500,000 or $200,000, it was more important to move this process forward. So we both have agreed, and I think on recorder's court, we're going to be asking the board to go back to the original agreement given to them back in January and to honor that original staff agreement on recorder's court and send that to the city immediately.
Mr. Smith, your own chairman said he wasn't in favor of a 2-year phase out, said it multiple times. What's changed now, and how do you pass this through?
You know, am I talking to board members individually? I think there has been really a change of heart because, as I have discussed, and I'm sure Ms. Cutter's done the same thing, as I've talked to board members, I think they see it's important. They understand, like on the cost issues, the big problem is not understanding. I think there's been a lot of miscommunication in the past. Stephanie said it very clearly. Sometimes perception's 100%, so we then had to change perception over the last few months. That's why it's taken this long. So I feel like now we're moving forward. Board members understand, and again, my chairman always says, people don't know what they don't know. You've got to educate them on the points, and I think we're doing that.
What happens if the terms aren't approved in the 60 days?
If the terms are not approved, then we step back and we have to, the two of us will have to look at some other agreement or moving forward. I mean, we've got to have police service. You know, we've left on the table the ability to be able to hire a police chief for the county, and we have a contract on prepared and ready to do that. But at this point, that is not my preference.
Has the county pretty much abandoned the idea of creating a county police department?
I would say it's not abandoned. Obviously, it's going to have to be, will this agreement be adopted by both boards? If this framework is agreed and we develop the agreement, then that's put aside. There would be no need for it.
Ms. Cutter, yesterday, County Manager Smith said that this has taken up about a third of his time in the past year. How about you? How much time have you
A lot of time. A lot of time, frankly, too much time. I personally think that this process should have been much easier. It's always been about what was best for the community with me. And when County Manager Smith came on board at our very first meeting, we both agreed and shook hands that we would work together to do what was best for this community. So I think it really took a bit too long, but I'm glad we're here today.
All right, thank you guys. I've got copies of the framework that were shared to the elected bodies. If you need them afterwards, come see me. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.